The idea of this is that you can have 1,000,000 people yelling no at what they don't want. And there's very little power in that. It just takes one person to hold the space of what is desired. And it's more powerful than millions of people shouting no at something. Rather than joining a protest march and adding your name to the big list, how much more powerful to be in bed, dreaming of a reality and holding the space and living that in your life and knowing it's true, and stop reading the newspapers and stop watching the news and stop arguing against. Go ahead, read the newspapers and see the news and all that in order to build your desire, because the desire can get very strong and the desire can be a very powerful aspect of it. Well, there's one last one, Alan, who teaches the supercharging workshop. He had attended my workshop many times, and he had been thinking that I had talked about this subject, and he had heard me talk about it many times. He thought, well, why don't I just try that? Because he had never tried it before. So he had a job making $8 an hour as an administrative assistant for a very paranoid and nervous boss. He was not happy. He was not fulfilled. Here's a man with tremendous compassion and skills for seeing energy and such, and here he's working this crappy job, basically. So he imagines himself doing something that is completely fulfilling. He doesn't know what it is. He just imagines he's doing. He doesn't have to have a picture of what it is, but you have a picture of the emotions. So he pictures himself doing this totally fulfilling job and getting paid wonderfully well, and people adoring him everywhere he is, and just having the most wonderful time and being able to buy nice things for his wife. Just having this lovely, easy life. Well, about 5 days later, he'd been doing it every day for about 5 to 10 minutes a day, just holding that space. But there was no internal contradiction within him. It's a very free thing. There's nothing pushing against the other way. As he does this, 5 days later, I happened to call him up and say, listen, I've got the supercharging class, and I think you might be the person I need to teach it. Well, and it all worked out perfectly well, and he's been teaching the supercharging class ever since. And everything he asked for completely came to him. Now, contradictions of experience, when you see something happen that you really don't like in your life, the beauty of that experience is it raises your desire for what is desired. So when you say, I don't want cockroaches, and I don't want this, and I don't want that, well, what is the desire that is born from those emotions? I want a place that's clean. I want a place that's spacious. I want a place that's beautiful. I want a place that's quiet. I want a place that feels wonderful, that feels sacred to me, that just opens my heart. I want a place where I can touch my spirituality and feel inspired. See the difference in emotional vibration of that? And when you hold what is truly desired, it's really fantastic. Well, there's two ways of getting to peace. There's one way, which the Buddhists are quite correct. You can lower your desires far enough that you enter a position of peace, and that does work. Of course, there's very little passion and enthusiasm and joy from that space because you're so desireless that hardly anything matters. There's another method which I prefer myself, which is if you have a very high desire, but let's just start here. If you have a very high desire and a very low ability to allow what you desire in, that's called suffering and extreme agony and pain and misery. That's the most painful place to be. And the Buddhists are right. If you lower the desire far enough, that'll actually become peaceful. However, if you have very high desire, if you raise your allowance levels of what you can allow yourself to receive, this becomes ecstasy, because everything flows and you have no resistance to what is desired, and everything just comes to you effortlessly. It just flows in. So if you raise your allowance, I always told my parents to do that, but I realized that it's something I had to do for myself. So as you can open yourself up to let yourself allow, how do you allow? You allow by feeling more ease, by feeling more joy, by feeling more gratitude. For a lot of people, it's just pretend to open yourself up to what would it be like if you already had it? What would it be like if it was already there? We live in a world where people feel fear all the time. And I am amazed. The more I think about this topic, the more astounded I am that nobody's talking about it. You know how you're in a room sometimes and you're there for 20 minutes before you notice that the fan is on? It's in the background. Well, fear is the fan in the background of our lives, and people are not paying attention to the fact that everywhere you go, every area of society tells you to be afraid. The military says you got to be very afraid, we need a big budget. The lawyers say, good thing you came to me now, because this could really turn out to be bad. The doctor says, boy, this is a very dangerous situation. The holistic people say, you got to take these vitamins to prevent. The box of Dixie cups I bought one day said, here's 12 reasons to be afraid. It's like, yeah, it said, don't pick up the cup if it falls on the floor and drink out of it. Don't drink out of it, somebody else drank out of it. Somebody else touches the cup, don't drink out of it. Be afraid. The parents tell you to be afraid. Don't talk to strangers, don't run in the street, don't do this, don't do that. The teachers tell you to be afraid. Politicians, everywhere you look, everybody's giving this message about being afraid. Well, when you're afraid, you're holding a resonance that attracts more reason to be afraid. And so, what is the reaction to fear? The reaction to fear is join a gang, an army, a congregation, a group that's going to protect you, that you can feel safe behind, rather than opening up to a loving universe, opening up to the love that's there, and feeling your own safety, and feeling that all is well, feeling happy on purpose without any justification. There's a friend of mine who came up with a really amazing little thing that I don't even know what you call it, but he wrote about it in a book where he said that if you note your level of self-esteem, your self-honesty, your joy, your self-trust, all these different things, and you monitor them hour by hour, which is like really excruciating, and you kind of say, all right, well, my level of self-esteem is here, my level of self-trust is here, my level of self-honesty is there, and then all of a sudden in your life you notice something really lousy happens. And then all of a sudden all the levels go down a whole bunch, and now you're feeling really crappy. He said if you use tremendous inner resources and you bring all the levels up on purpose, and you start feeling deeper self-esteem and deeper trust and deeper courage and all these other positive attributes that he listed, what happens is, out of the blue, something shifts in your outer reality that completely lifts you up to justify why you've been there. He says he's done it dozens and dozens of times, and it works like clockwork. But if you get into the funk and you dive down with that spiral, then you have other things happening, and then what do they say? When it rains, it pours, and one bad thing happens, and you stub your toe, and then this thing happens, and it's just a series of bad stuff. So you can actually hold that space. So the fear is pervasive in our culture, and so a lot of people react to that fear and say, well, let's be warriors. Let's have the path of the warrior, the spiritual warrior. I call the warrior the worrier, because if you're a warrior, you have to worry all the time. You've got to make plans. You've got to figure out what the enemy's going to do. You've got to get your strategy. You've got to attack and defend and retreat. You've got to go to all kinds of convolutions to make sure that happens. Okay, because a warrior has to protect and defend and attack and battle and know the enemy and strategize. That's a hard game to play. That's a hard thing to be involved in. How much better to look at the path of the adventurer, the person who just opens up in life as an adventure, and you get to love and embrace and know and discover and play and have fun. And this is an alternative that makes just as much sense. No less, no more. I just happen to like it a lot better.